the one person rule. Wow, that's sick. And then we're gonna go like this. I'm happy with that. Let's go. You have probably heard of a concept called TAM, which means total addressable market. You probably have not heard of a concept called SAM. And if you haven't heard of SAM, you probably haven't heard, which is your serviceable obtainable market. Now here's the deal. I think these are really good principles in business. I think they're overcomplex for what we're gonna try to get into today. Because at the end of the day, we're not trying to create a software business that we can exit for billions of dollars. There's a shadow here. This is gonna drive me insane on the video. Future videos, we're gonna work on that shadowing. I don't even know how. We're not trying to create a business that's gonna exit for $1 billion. We're trying to create a business that cash flows or profits us 7 figures a year, multi-6 figures a year. And I think these are great principles for economics, but I think a lot of the time entrepreneurs look at these principles as ways of understanding who they're trying to work with, their ICP, and how their ICP fits into the TAM. Today, I want to throw out anything you've ever heard about ideal client profiles, ICPs, and TAM, and I want to just simplify this down to what I call the one person rule. And today, I just want you to think, in whatever kind of business you have and whoever you work with, I want you to think about for a second, one person waving to you who is your ICP, your ideal client. Actually, we're not even going to use the term. Can I save this? Can I save this? No, that's going to drive me insane. Ideal client. Oh, this is turning bad so quick. This is why I like iPads. I don't want you to think about a profile of a human being. I want you to think of an actual human being. Someone you can put a name, someone you actually know that you could text right now, you could Slack, someone who's a client of yours, possibly someone who would be an ideal client of yours, but one specific person. And when you think about that person, you're gonna think about how old they are. You're gonna think about interests that they have. You'll think about their lifestyle, their strengths, their weaknesses. You could come up with several identifying factors about that person, because we're not thinking about a profile of a person. We're not thinking about 50,000 people and what they have in common. We're thinking about one specific person. And the coolest part about this is that when you think about one specific person, it becomes a lot easier to speak to that person. So if you're having troubles, I should get into this sooner, but if you're having troubles with creating content, example given, if you're struggling to make YouTube videos, shorts, if you're struggling to write emails, it's oftentimes because you don't know who you're creating content for. It's really hard to speak to 50,000 people, but 50,000 people is a good TAM. It's actually a TAM that later in this program, I'm going to tell you really need to look for 50,000. But if you're trying to speak to a stadium full of people, you're now trying to talk to such a general group that it's hard to know what to speak on, what to speak about, whether some people will care about it, some people won't, etc. But when you mentally switch to talking to one person, it's really easy to make content feel like a conversation. And conversational content is a content style that works really well. So if you're struggling with content, if you're struggling on messaging, meaning when it comes to VSLs, headlines, any kind of assets inside of your offer, if you're struggling with understanding how to message it to somebody, it's because, again, you're trying to message it to the masses versus if you're trying to message it to one person and how it fits into their strengths, their weaknesses, their stage of life, etc. If you're creating content but you're struggling to build an audience, that means you're struggling to retain viewership. And that oftentimes comes because people don't feel like they're actually being spoken to. They feel like they're watching a specific piece of content that might relate to them, but it's because of the expertise or the knowledge in the video. It's not because of the person speaking to them about where they are in life. You might be on a YouTube binge and you see a video that pertains to you and you check out the video, it's really good, but then you go check out that channel and that channel really has nothing to do with you, you're not going to subscribe. And that's why a lot of people struggle to build audience, because they're not talking to one person, they're trying to talk again to the masses, to that 50,000 person, 100,000, 500,000, 2 million person TAM. You can't speak to the masses, which is something we've already discussed. You have to be a specialist, not a generalist. But most entrepreneurs tackle this in the wrong direction. They start with a large group of people. This group of people tends to be anyone who could buy. And a lot of entrepreneurs would call this TAM, but it's not TAM. We're going to skip that for a second. Then the normal process is say, hey, out of everyone who could buy, let's filter down to less people. And in the process of filtering, you lose a small percentage as it goes to the next stage. And then you do that again, one more filtering process, until you get a couple people that are like-minded in similar-ish areas of stage. And you can really think, okay, I can speak to these people. So this tends to be final outcome. And I want you to think about this. If you're selling fat loss, how are you currently trying to take the fat loss market, which is massive? I mean, pretty much every human being in existence that isn't skinny or has abs. How are you taking that market, that group of buyers, anyone who could buy in there, and how are you niching or narrowing it down? What you're going to think about is you're applying filters to the process to get to less people that you can try to speak to more specifically. This entire process is broken. I think you're working at this in the wrong direction. Because what I like to do, and what I have found is a very easy way to simplify this, is again, the one person rule. Which means instead of starting with a big group of people and getting to a smaller group of people, I actually want to start with one person who I can know, name, think about, and write the trait stuff. And I just want to find out how many people like this exist. Going back to weight loss, the process that a lot of fitness coaches get into is anyone who could buy weight loss, meaning anyone who's looking to lose weight. And then you filter down based on maybe age or men or using high performing aspects, whatever it is, or maybe the types of workouts. And then you get to a small group of people that you kind of know they have these similarities in common, versus thinking, I know this guy named Tom. And Tom is 35. He really enjoys Oktoberfest beers and playing cornhole, hanging out with neighbors. He lives modestly. He's a dad of 2. He's really good at X, Y, and Z. He's really weak at blah, 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 right? If you start to think about that person, Tom, then you can ask yourself, how many people like this exist? And you can start to do really good research. And this is actually one of the most powerful things AI has recently brought to the market. It's the ability to research how many people exist, how many Toms exist in a certain market. And so what I want to do is I want to specify out who Tom is, find out how many people like that exist, and then strip away or broaden specifiers. Meaning if Tom is 35, I don't only need people to be 35 to work with me. I could work with 30 to 40. Or if he has interests that are super unique and specify down a little too much, I can remove certain interests. It's like I'm starting with the filter set and able to remove filters versus thinking about what filters to add to take away. And the cool part about that is that no matter how large my market or potential buyers become, right, I'm slowly, as I remove filters, if we actually kept the process here going, the stages would look like this. We're going through and we're removing, if he's 35, we're removing filters. And through that process, we're now finding more Toms. But what's cool is these Toms are really alike, they're just different ages. And if that's not enough for me to create a viable market, then I can add more and more and more by just removing certain things or broadening. Again, if example given, Tom really likes Oktoberfest beer, I don't have to make it around Oktoberfest beers, I can just make it beer. So learn how to lose your belly fat while keeping a weekend beer. That's an example that a friend of mine has been using as an example of how to specify offer, but you're doing that based on the interest that this guy Tom has. And you can literally just think about one person that you've worked with in the past that would be a really good client that hasn't signed on with you, whatever it is. You can think about that person, start to spec it out, and just remove. And then you can ask ChatGPT, how many people like this exist? How many people like this exist? And we're starting to build a TAM. And once we get to 50,000 people working from 1 to 50,000 rather than 2 million down to 50,000, we now have a really good idea on who we're talking to, because all we did is slightly broaden the amount of people that are exactly like Tom, from 1 person to 50,000 people, from people who are 35 exactly to 30 to 40, from people who might like Oktoberfest beers to people who like general beer, from people who like snowboarding to casual sports, from people who like cornhole to any kind of yard sports. And you can start to broaden and broaden and broaden until you have a good viable market that you can create content to. But the coolest thing about this is now when you create content, you know who you're talking to. And there's a really good argument to be made that even if you use a cornhole analogy here, other people are going to at least understand it in your market because they're alike. Your messaging can be much more specific. Your audience will build because when you create content around what Tom would like, other people who are just like Tom, these other 50,000 people you're finding, they will like it too. And so it's this mental shift reversing how most people specify down marketing. Meaning most people, most entrepreneurs, most companies will go from how large the market is, how many people could buy, how do we filter it out to talk to a specific group-ish of people that they know nothing about, versus let me take Tom and talk to Tom knowing that Tom exists 50,000, 100,000 times. And when you do that, it becomes very, very easy to create content. It becomes very easy to make your messaging crystal clear as to who it's for. And then what's really cool is that people who are not Tom, you know, the Sams of the world, they won't follow our content, they won't get into our buying cycles, they won't actually create inefficiencies in our marketing process. And then what's really cool, taking that example, if Sam starts to say anything about our content and starts to leave derogatory comments, then all the Toms that follow you will actually argue for you on your behalf and stand up for you, because when Sam argues your content or says anything about your content, what they're really doing is saying something that goes against the interests of Tom, and Tom will stand up for his own interests. That's a different concept that we'll get into. Pablo Escobar did that really well, making people argue for you on your own behalf and such. Crazy analogy, but you'll understand when we get there. But this is the most simple way of understanding how to specify markets by reverse engineering from 1 person to many people versus many people down to 1 person. We'll get into TAM and SAM and SOM and such when we get into economics and understanding the viability of our business model. But if you're struggling to create content, if you're struggling with messaging, specificity, clarity, building audience, etc., and you need to specify down who you're speaking to, who you're selling to, this is the best way to do it. I hope you guys found this valuable. I'll see you in the next training. Until next time, happy hunting. If you like that video, it's actually not even good enough for me to put inside of my program. So I have a mastermind for coaches, consultants, expert-based businesses, anyone selling expertise. I have financial planners in their agencies, etc. And I'm the opposite of most info guys, if you will, where most info guys are really good marketers. The best marketers will say your best content should be your marketing content. I personally believe that your best content should be your product if you're in the info world. This video for me was a little bit too vague. I don't think that the chronological order of me presenting the problem and then the solution was there. I don't think it was as crisp and clear as I want it to be. And so I've already re-recorded it. It's gonna go inside of our mastermind. It's awesome. It's way better than this one. And there's a lot more content like that going in there as well. So if you want more info on my mastermind, if you want more info on how I can help you grow your coaching business, just message me on Instagram at Paul Daly. We'll put it on the screen, the word coach. And it's not a managed flow. I'm gonna personally respond. Give me some time because I do personally look at your page, look at what you're doing, etc., to try to make a personal response to it. I'll send you info on the mastermind, give you a taste of what it looks like. And if you wanna hop on a call, then we can jam out. As always, guys, love you much. See you soon. Happy hunting.